Hey folks, and welcome back to the Heart of Horsemanship podcast, brought to you by Colton Woods Horsemanship. I am your host, Colton Woods, and every week we connect with horse lovers, enthusiasts, competitors, and professionals from all across the globe with the mission of diving into the heart of horsemanship and educating horses and people with a lifetime in mind. That's right, folks. Horsemanship to us is not just a way to train a horse, but it is everything we do with our horses and in our own lives. That's right. This podcast is dedicated to helping fellow horse people learn more about their horses and themselves. Every episode, we want you to walk away with not just new information and a greater understanding, but also the tools and the knowledge that you can implement on a regular basis. So here on the Heart of Horsemanship podcast, guys, we keep it fun, we keep it informative, we keep it real, and we keep it positive. So thanks for tuning in to another Heart of Horsemanship podcast episode. Now let's go ahead and dive in. Guys, we're wrapping up 2019. I am on the road right now around the holidays. And so I am filming and audio recording this episode out of the truck. And I certainly am happy to be tuning in with y'all to wrap up this decade as we go into the next one. And with all the holidays and all this stuff, one of the things that's going around is people are making changes. And you guys have noticed that this episode is titled You versus You. There's a lot of folks out there, they're getting ready to make some New Year's resolutions and all that stuff. And honestly, it kind of makes me cringe, to be honest, but I don't want to discourage anybody from taking the opportunity of a new decade, a new year coming around to make some positive changes in your lives. What I want to do in this episode, guys, is bring as much value as I can to help you make sure that your goals, your plans, the changes that you'd like to implement in your lives are ones that are sustainable, ones that are with a lifetime in mind, right? The one thing that when I think about making changes is, one of the quickest ways for goals and all of these types of things to fade out very fast is that they're too short-sighted. And that our goals, they're short-sighted, and a branch of that would be that we're looking for fast results. Maybe you're looking for fast weight loss, or you're looking for big results with little effort, or you're looking to just redo your entire relationship with your horse in the next 3 weeks. Or it doesn't mean all of these things doesn't mean that we can't make some headway on them. But if we're looking at these things for the wrong reasons, if we're doing something because we're more concerned about what someone else thinks about us versus doing it because we really want to be doing it for our own self, then we can almost guarantee that a lot of times these goals are not going to last long term. And so I want to kind of seize the opportunity that these New Year's resolutions are rolling around and help each one of you guys tackle those New Year's resolutions in a way that that you don't just stop when the end of your resolution time comes to an end, but you've actually created a habit that then can be carried forward for the rest of your life. So I think that makes it really important that we look at the kind of goals that we set for New Year's resolutions, or goals that we set in general. Last year, I started a pretty big quest of my own that I'll share a little bit with you about in preparation for a Mustang makeover competition. And I started that journey in middle of about the beginning of the second week of December of 2018. And it kept evolving. And I had an initial goal to start being more accountable for my time and to start using this blue book here to start processing some of my thoughts and my ideas and try to have another way of processing information that was coming through my head that was regarding my horses, regarding my business, regarding my mental, physical, emotional, and spiritual health. All these things I started using this book for. And then it led a couple weeks later, I started practicing doing some meditation, started trying some cold water therapy practices, and all of these things that started to it was almost like I started having a bit of a written journey in this book. And the reason that I started doing these changes personally was because I wanted to have a stronger connection and a better relationship with my horse, because I knew that would be an underlying factor to doing the best that I could possibly do in the Extreme Mustang Makeover competition. So at the end, it was a little bit of a short-sighted goal, as the fact that I wanted to win this competition, but also I wanted to take the competition as an opportunity to change myself as a person for the better, and to change myself as a horseman for the better, and to change my horsemanship and how I did things and what I was aware of, because I knew I was going to be working with an animal. It was a feral Mustang that self-preservation instincts were at an all-time high. The horse's self-awareness would be potentially greater than any other horse that I'd ever worked with. And in order for me to be able to work at their level, to work at the horse's level, I had to raise my level up. I had to raise my self-awareness, and I had to raise my presence, my focus, my ability to then be aware of myself and aware of the horse, and in aspects that I didn't even know were possible at the time. And so I did this all in lieu of changing my life, essentially, so I could better work with this horse and then be able to keep going on. Little did I know that I did it for myself, by myself, with not much foresight other than maximizing this competition. But then it became very clear that the things that I was learning were things that I'll share with you that fundamentally changed how I live my life and how it could change a lot of the relationships and the dynamics that we have with our horses and how we live our lives, because our mission is to educate horses and people with a lifetime in mind. And I believe that there's horsemanship and there's lifemanship. And I divide the two because sometimes when we think about horsemanship, people think about just working with horses. Personally, I think that horsemanship is everything. It's not just a way to train a horse, but it's everything we do with our horses and our own lives. But sometimes there's things that we have to practice in our own lives that will transfer over to our horses. And a lot of times that's why the title of this episode is You versus You, because it's not me versus my horse, or me versus somebody else, or me comparing myself to somebody else. It's me comparing myself to me and trying to be a little bit better than I was yesterday. And the addiction to other people's opinions is at an all-time high right now. Particularly, we got social media, we got all these things, or likes and comments and shares and all this other garbage. And we have to understand that we're all on our own journey. The only person that we know 100% is our own self. And at the end of the day, we have to go look in the mirror and look at ourselves, and we have to be honest with ourselves. And no one knows all the things about us that we actually know about ourselves. So it's not fair to compare yourself to somebody else, because you don't know everything about them and about their situation. And that goes in all aspects. But we know everything, we know ourselves. And we have to give ourselves credit where credit is due when we're trying, and we have to keep the promises that we make to ourselves. We got to hold ourselves accountable, and then we also have to give ourselves credit to living up to keeping our own promises with ourselves. Because if we can't be responsible to ourselves, it's hard to be responsible to other people. But it's not sustainable, and it's not healthy for us to be responsible to other people but not be responsible ourselves. All right. And so, I looked through, did a little research. We found about 80% of people don't keep their New Year's resolutions. And I think that's low. 80%, it feels like 90, 95%. But that goes through all those same little issues that we're going through before. And so I want to help you guys put in some processes that we can utilize to make long-term changes for our horsemanship, for our lifemanship, and all of that. And a lot of times, if you're thinking about making changes, you'll be in a thinking phase. You're like, okay, what do I want to do? How do I want to do it? And all that thinking phase is crucial, because one of the things that sometimes people do is they'll make a resolution or a plan for a resolution or a change that's not sustainable. And so we have to take in, what is your day-to-day life like? What is your home life like? When you're at home, are you constantly doing stuff? Do you have downtime? Do you have the ability to serve yourself, whether that's read more spiritually based content, or maybe that's go to the gym, or maybe that's spend more time with your horse, or like whatever these resolutions are? We have to create a plan that is feasible, and one that you can go, okay, it might be a little less ambitious than I would like it to be right now, because when you get that jive, when you're ready to make those changes in your life, a lot of times we want to just go all in. And I am guilty, 110% guilty of jumping into stuff with about 175% effort and being able to keep that up going for a while, but then it's not sustainable, versus we need to realize that we try to cram too much in on a day-to-day basis, but we underestimate how much we can get done in a long-term basis. So being very realistic that when you write your calendar down, when you write your goals down, when you write your plan down for your resolutions, for your changes, be realistic. If you haven't been going and working with your horse for an hour and a half a day, 6 days a week, don't act like you're going to get to the barn twice a day, 6 days a week, because you haven't hardly been getting to the barn 2 or 3 days a week to work with your horse. Nonetheless, 12 times a week, right? So don't overwhelm yourself. And the same could go for a gym, or the same could go for a home workout, or the same could go for any type of change that you're considering making. You have to make sure you're being realistic. Many people have kids. They have youngsters, like young kids. They've got other responsibilities outside of work and family, that maybe volunteer responsibilities that you still have to keep doing. You have all these things going on in your lives that you have to make sure you're still in the picture, that you can serve them. Maybe sometimes you have to take a few things out to make this possible to serve yourself. But we have to be realistic. You don't want to be too short-sighted and have a plan that's not sustainable. And the important part about this thinking phase too is that we have to change the way we think. A lot of times we've heard the cliche sayings that your thoughts are your reality and your reality becomes your thoughts, right? A lot of these cliche type sayings, but a lot of times these cliche type sayings are loaded with potential impact and opportunity for us to maximize our lives, but they've lost the meaning because they've been overused and misused and misinterpreted. But it's very true that your thoughts become your reality, because the way that this works is that if you have the same thoughts, the same feelings, the same emotions every single day, your body responds to that. Your genetic makeup, your chemical makeup, your hormonal makeup within your body starts to form to your thoughts, your feelings, your emotions, which ultimately come from your experience every day. So if you have a negative association with going to work, or you have a negative association to working with your horse because you think he's a jackass, right? That thought process becomes your reality, because your body starts to prepare itself and to form itself to match that lifestyle. So a lot of times people, I think that they said 70% of people live above the stress threshold. 70% of people live above this stress threshold that where we should be living every day. When we live above that, when you have too much stress in your life, too much cortisol and other stress hormones running through your system, your body responds to that and breaks down. It's easier to get more sick. You become more potentially to have maybe heart disease or cancer or all these other things, right? That can happen with health, just overall health issues, because your body is running in an unsustainable fashion, which means you have too much stress. But that also becomes part of who you are. If you live in a constant state of stress, sometimes it's hard to then be any other way, because it's the same thoughts, the same feelings, the same emotions every day. So your body starts to live based on how you've been living for such a long time. Now, the question is, if our body is used to living how we've always been living in the past, can we actually get our body, because we are where we are today, but if our vision is to be better tomorrow and to build a better tomorrow, or to build a better future for ourselves, that means that we have to change the way we think. And can we get our body to change based on our newfound mindset? And there's a lot of challenge that comes along with that, because when you try to go from an old way of being, an old way of thinking, an old way of what your body is accustomed to doing, you are in that gateway, you're in the trenches of change, and you will be fighting your old self with what you want to be your new self. And that oftentimes comes into that challenge of creating new habits. And that means that we have to hold ourselves accountable and give ourselves credit for what we have been accomplishing, And that's why I really like having like an accountability journal to where I write down every single thing and I check it off and I give myself credit for working that horse, getting up on time, getting the coffee pot made, making sure I got out the door on time, taking those phone calls that I needed to take, answering those emails I needed to answer, filming this episode of the Heart of Horsemanship podcast. When I say I was going to film this episode of the Heart of Horsemanship podcast, all of those things become very important because it's so easy to just revert back to our old way of being, which for a lot of us is not a healthy way of being, right? But the fact of the matter is that when we talk about where we want to go, if we talk about that vision that we have, that goal that we want to accomplish, many of us, and particularly if you share that with a good friend, many of us know that amazing, elated type feeling that we get when we dive into that with somebody else, right? We know the greatness that comes from sharing those types of things. And that, in those moments, that experience creates an emotion. So a lot of us might get an actual chemical hit of dopamine because we're so excited about it. Our body's like, yes, like this is amazing. And we are positively reinforcing this idea. And then if we create that and we couple that with this clear intention of what we were going to do and how we're going to do it, because we have a sustainable plan in action and we have a way of being present in the moment and actually, which in order to have a clear intention, you have to be present. So you have this emotion, you have this experience and these feelings that come along with this new idea. Then your second thing you have is your clear intention and your ability to be present in the moment. When you have all of these things, then your body cannot tell the difference between whether this was the past or the present. It knows that it's not familiar because it has to make new brain pathways and new connections on this way of thinking and being, but it still recognizes that it's a positive thing and it's something that we want. It doesn't mean that, it still means that we're in that doing phase. We still have to work at it, but we can actually start to tell the body what we can utilize our vision for where we want to be and treat that like our new reality, and our body will respond to it. So by the time we ever achieve that goal of where we want to be, every time we ever get to that vision of where we want to be, our body has already responded genetically, chemically, hormonally to that as if it's the new reality. So versus treating our body like it has to catch up all the time, we can use our mind to change our entire chemistry within our body. And that can astronomically change the course of your health over the time, because you can, if you're in a constant state of stress, you're genetically, you deregulate. Things get worse. Your immune system tanks, all these things. Versus if you get into a positive state of mind, you're working on your vision, you have a state of presence, you have clear intentionality, you can actually upgrade, you can upregulate your health, and you can actually deregulate all the things that make you unhealthy. You can start to suppress the things that make you unhealthy and bring up all the genetics, the parts in your chemistry that make you feel healthier. You can start to maximize that within your own life. So your thought process is so important. And then you have to have that plan so that when you start doing it, that you can keep it up and it's actually sustainable. And the plan, I think, also needs to include giving yourself credit, being understanding, being realistic, creating the long-term goals, not necessarily maybe basing them on numbers, but basing it on whether you got up and got the crap done for the day. And then over a period of time, as things go on a most basic level, they go from a thought to something that we do to where they become a more of a regular habit. And then eventually they become a way of being, which is the third phase, just a way of being. And a lot of that has to do with a conscious versus subconscious. When we have to think about this stuff consciously, it's not a way of being. It's something that we have to do because we have to work at it, because it's not quite who we are yet. But you might know people in your lives that they love to run. I had a couple of friends that these people would run like all the time. And it didn't matter the weather. They would just run. And it became a part of who they were. And the more they did it, the better they got. I knew a couple people, I actually dated a girl in high school that she didn't run hardly at all. And when we were in high school, she started running and started doing cross country. And I remember by the time we graduated, she was running all the time. And it went from a place of like, oh, this is going to be something that she does regularly to this became a part of who she was. This wasn't just something that she did regularly, but it was like, no, like this is who's part of who she is now. And it was because she did over and over and over and over. And early on, really had to work at it. And then the more you work on it, the easier it becomes and the better you can be at it. And then over a period of time, it becomes who you are because you become more familiar with it. Your body starts to change based on who you are becoming. And that who you are becoming can start with as simple as a vision for where you would like to go. And so guys, as you think about these New Year's resolutions or these changes that you want to make in your lives, think about why you want to make these changes in your lives. Why is this change appealing to you? And strip it down. Be honest. Get out a pen and paper, find you a little notebook or something, and find a quiet place where you can escape, where no one's going to bother you, where you're not going to have any interruptions. Maybe you even have to tell a few people. Maybe you have to turn your phone off. Maybe you're at home. Maybe you have to tell your husband, your wife, or your kids, like, hey, I just need the next bit, like while I'm going to go in the room, nobody come and bother me. I need to work out a few things. You need to create the time and the place so that you don't feel obligated to be doing other things and that you can actually be present in working on these things. Write down your goals, write down whatever's running through your head, work through these. It might take way more than one session, but start working through what is running through your mind, whether it's the changes you'd like to make. And that could be in the way you eat. It could be in the way that your household runs. It could be in finances. It could be in your horsemanship. It could be in a lot of different things. And because ultimately, and I just want to throw this little pin in there, a lot of y'all follow us for the horsemanship stuff, but to me, it's not, there's no difference. And if we can change the way we live our lives, our horsemanship will change. And I wrote this down. I'll share this with you guys. I wrote this down a couple weeks ago. I've been working with a coach of my own, and along this journey, I've been trying to figure out how I can convey the message of what I really want to do. And I love working with horses, and I love working with people, and honestly, one of the biggest visions I have, right? I'll share with you guys the vision I have, is I want to help people build the best connection and the best relationship they can with their horse. I want to help each and every person obtain their goals with their horses, to be able to enjoy the things that they enjoy doing, whether that's trail riding, ranch riding, reining, dressage, hunters, jumpers, whatever the case may be. I want to help people be able to do those things that they love doing with their horses. And I also know that that's a small piece of it, because I know that as we live better lives mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually, a lot of the things with our horses become a lot easier. And if I could leave a legacy on the rest of the world, and once my time's come and gone, that was far beyond just helping people with their horses, but it was helping people. And this is what I wrote down was, I want to help people. I want to change people's lives through horses so they can live healthier mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually by feeling and seeing the things I feel and see. But I can't do that for them. They have to experience it for themselves. I can just try to set up the opportunities for them so that they can become more self-aware and experience it for themselves. And that last little part was a little bit influenced by Tom Dorrance. I was listening to, as I read that, I was listening to one of Tom's books, and if I could help each person that I have the opportunity to work with to be healthier mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually, the byproduct will be that the horsemanship becomes better. But I couldn't think of anything more rewarding personally than to know that someone is happier in life, is healthier in life, and enjoying life and experiencing true joy and happiness, and ultimately able to then enjoy their horse that much more because the things around our lives of horses are better. And we often know that there's times when those things are not good, that are not ideal. Maybe they're stressful outside of horses, and we get to the barn and our horse becomes our psychotherapist. So that's a little bit of my vision for my future, is trying to help people live better mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually, so that they can maximize the connection and the relationships that they have with their horses. And that ultimately I can see that down the path that a lot of the technicalities of the horsemanship will start to go away. We won't be so much worried on lateral flexion because we'll have a lot of other pieces aligned up within ourselves that'll show up in our horses, and things will create a better system of flow, a better energy, a better communication, a better willingness, a better understanding, and all of these things. But guys, just to wrap up, as you go into this new year, I hope that this episode leaves you with a few things to think about. I hope that it helps you, inspires you, and helps you, gives you some tangible ways to make a change in your life, to take your vision and actually put a practical plan together. And there's so many things that you can do. You can take a book just like this, and you can start writing things down and holding yourselves accountable. You can find an actual person, an accountability partner that might have similar goals, or maybe they don't have similar goals, but they care about who you are. And you can reach out to them and say, hey, I want to do this, but I want somebody to check in with. I want somebody to kind of push me and hold me accountable for this. And it's not that you're doing it because you care what they think, but you're asking them to be a part of that journey because you know that they care about you and they're willing to then be there to help support you along the way. And they're not going to necessarily say, oh, it's okay, you didn't do it today, but also be respectful and understanding, yet kind of keep pushing you towards where you'd like to go with your horsemanship, with your life. Whatever the case may be, you can keep working towards that. And overall, guys, I hope that this episode, whether it's inspires a change today or not, maybe it helps clarify some things on how we think and how we operate. I always try to bring as much value as we can, and we're going to be doing more of this along the way. I want to bring as much value as you can. So if there's questions that you have about this particular episode, is there things that you would like to hear on maybe the connections between our lifemanship and horsemanship and certain discussions you'd like to have, be sure to send us a message. You can submit those at office.coltonwoodshorsemanship@gmail.com, and you can send those there, and we will get them. We will correspond with you back and forth, and maybe even able to put a specific episode of your request on the schedule for upcoming. Now, exciting announcement coming up just in a couple of days, just about a week away. We have a special guest coming on to the Heart of Horsemanship that I am extremely excited about. I believe that you guys are going to be able to gather an immense amount of knowledge from her. Her name is Lucia Clementson, and she has made quite the name for herself on the West Coast. She was the first and maybe only girl, I'd have to check on the only, but she was definitely the first woman to compete at the NFR, the National Finals Rodeo, as part of the Colt Starting USA Challenge. And she grew up riding event horses and English horses around Olympic level type style horses, working for world-renowned professionals, and has now actually made quite the jump into more of the vaquero style horsemanship, where she's riding a lot of ranch and rein cow horse prospects. She's hosting clinics for some top clinicians, doing some teaching herself, and really making some waves out there and bringing a lot of positivity, a lot of realistic horsemanship and practical advice on how to create a better relationship, a better connection with your horse while getting the job done. She's got a very unique experience having grown up riding on the English side of things, now more on the Western side. She has very evidence teaching in the Tom Dorrance, Ray Hunt, Buck Brannaman styles, and she has a really unique perspective with a lot of unique experiences. I'm really excited to be able to welcome her on to the Heart of Horsemanship podcast here next week. So y'all stay tuned. Be sure to share this with your friends and your family, guys. Be sure to also, right below this podcast that you guys are listening to on Apple, Android, or Spotify, be sure to give us that rating, that 5-star rating, as you feel we deserve. Leave a comment as well. Those are the things that keep these podcasts towards the tops. They don't really keep track of how many the views or the listens. They don't really keep track of that much. That's not what keeps these podcasts. It's your reviews and your comments. The comments really help on that. So that'll help other horse people be able to tap into this podcast as well. So greatly appreciate everybody tuning in to another Heart of Horsemanship episode. We will catch you later this week or even next week for Lucia's interview. Super, super excited. Going to be a great one. Y'all have a blessed and happy new year. Stay safe out there. We'll talk to y'all soon. Take care, guys.